Good morning. It is Thursday in the Northeast. It is cold. In fact, all across the country it's cold. It's cold in Nashville, cold in Florida, cold in North Dakota, Montana, Jackson Hole. 200 inches of snow they're going to have by the end of today altogether. That's so much snow. Thank God they have a ski area. So, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and even Corgis are cold in this weather. So he is wearing his thickest winter blanket / coat, which is way too hot in the house. But if we go outside and take a walk today, he's going to need this, and he hardly ever wears this. But it is down at night to like -5, 6, 7, 8. Wind chill right now is -15, and the actual temperature is somewhere around 9 or 10 for the high today. I think right now it's like 5. Anyway, and that's nothing compared to what's going on across the upper West, Midwest, and the Northern Plains and the Rockies. So I thought today would be a great time to talk about things you need to remember about taking good care of your pets in the cold. And one of them is very important. Keep your pets off icy lakes and streams. This little stream behind my house here, which you can't see under all the snow, it looks frozen solid, and when there was a lot of beaver activity out there, it was a little deeper, but it's a pretty quickly moving stream, and it never really does freeze in the winter. One day, my friend with her 2 dachshunds and me with Tristan were out snowshoeing, and we made it across okay. We explored over on the other side for a couple of hours. It was one of those great sunny, getting in nice and warm in the afternoon kind of winter days. It must have been maybe 20 degrees. We were coming home and I heard Heather go, "Oh my God!" And she had fallen in trying to rescue one of her dachshunds who had fallen in. Now, a dachshund weighs about 15 pounds on a good day. And then as I tried to move closer to her, I stepped in and went into my knee with my left foot, picked up my Corgi, and Heather and I just basically waded home through the ice. So it can be January, it can be cold, and the water still might not be frozen. They say you need something like 6 to 10 inches of lake to make it safe to walk on in the winter, and dogs don't know that. And they think, "Oh, I haven't tried it here before," and they just go out onto the water. So be super careful with your pets around icy lakes and ponds. And right now the Connecticut River is at something like 38 degrees along a lot of it. But, it's so cold, it's much colder. So the cold air is meeting the relatively warm water of the river and actually creating this weather phenomenon I can't remember the name of, where there's like a mist over the water, but it's really frozen water droplets just suspended in the air. It's kind of fascinating, but that's a sign right there that it's not cold enough on that ice on the river to walk out there with your dog, or your cat, or yourself for that matter. So be super cautious around icy lakes and water in the winter. Now, when I was a kid, we were in South Jersey, and when it got this cold for a week, those lakes froze almost solid, and we could skate for weeks in the winter without a problem with our pets. The other important thing in the winter to think about with your pets is don't leave them in the car. Just like in the summer, the temperature in your car can rise 20 degrees in something like 5 minutes. Same thing in the winter. The temperature in your car, although it's nice and warm and toasty from you driving to the grocery store, it can drop something like 20 degrees in less than 10 minutes, which can make it too cold to leave a pet in the car. Now, if you have an Alaskan Malamute, maybe he'll be okay in the car. But lots of people with little fluffy lap dogs, poodles, small dogs of any kind, they are not going to stay warm in the car. And why do you need to bring your dog to the grocery store any day? Anyway, if he wants a ride in the car, just take him for a ride in the car and, maybe do a drive-through coffee pickup, but don't leave your dog in the car in this weather. It is way too cold. It only takes 15 minutes to get frostbite in this weather on any exposed skin. Your dog's paws and nose and some dogs' ears is exposed skin, and so you definitely want to keep them warm in this weather. Don't leave them in the car. Another thing people forget about is outdoor cats. My sister was very concerned when we were down in New Jersey because with all the dogs and the commotion and the new cats in the house, her cats didn't want to come in at night. It is really important that outdoor cats do not go out in this weather. And if your cat is out, wrestle him down and bring him in. It is just too hard for them to stay warm in this weather. And we all know how cats love a warm spot. And more than once I've seen my sister's cat laying in a sunny spot in the front yard under a tree. But because it's got that nice little warm spot, if it starts to snow or if the temperature drops in the evening and the cat's asleep, he might wake up and be completely disoriented. Cats in particular are known to get lost in snowstorms because they lose their sense of direction surrounded by the whiteness. And when you think about how low they are to the ground and their perspective on things, they can't really get a good sense of where they are. So super important to keep that kitty indoors in the cold weather. And their ears, even though there's fur on their ears, very susceptible to frostbite. Their noses, their little pads. So even though you may have an outdoor cat, bring him in. And I know when the weather was this bad, even our barn cats, we kept them in the tack room, which was, 45 degrees or something, which was still better than letting them go out. And you have to be really careful if you do have barn cats that you have a warm place for them to go and that they don't wander outdoors and not come back and end up really too cold and lost to come home. Another thing at this time of year to remember is that pets are very interested in antifreeze. It smells good, it tastes good to them, but it is highly deadly. Just a tiny bit can kill an animal. And people have antifreeze in their windshield wiper fluid, and they're using more in their cars. Sometimes people use it in their heaters. Sometimes you might have some in your basement that's been on a shelf and you've used it in your heater and now it's sitting there. Make sure you keep the antifreeze away from the animals, and especially remember cats, because they might be running around in your garage chasing mice and stumble upon the antifreeze that spilled. So rock salt also pretty toxic to pets. A lot of the ice melt stuff, very toxic to pets. And if they are licking their paws after being in it, they can get really sick, even just plain old salt. I use kosher salt mostly around my house because that's just salt. There's no chemicals in it. And the other important thing to remember regarding all of this is to have a damp, warm towel when you come in from taking your pet out for a walk to wipe off the paws, so that any rock salt that's been in the road or the chemicals they put on the roads, all of that, you want to wash off your pet's feet and his body so that he doesn't lick himself and get really sick from it. And in fact, antifreeze is deadly. The other thing you can think about if you've got a big dog and you're going out for a long time is using some of the many boots that you can put over your dog's paws to keep because that really is skin on the bottom of their pads. You want to keep that warm. And for a lot of people with like golden retrievers, they get snowballs in their pads. So keep that fur trimmed out under there if you've got a dog that has long fur between his pads, so that he doesn't get snowballs under there, because the snowball can build up and you don't know it, and he's playing, he doesn't know it, and it becomes like a marble in your shoe, and he ends up with tendon problems, paw problems, and a limp that could really preclude him having a good time for the rest of the winter. So make sure to keep the fuzz trimmed out around the paws, and if you're going to be out for a long time, really consider some kind of boots. They make some that are like balloons that you can just roll up over the paw. I have some that have little Velcro straps. My Corgi has tiny, tiny feet. I don't even know what I would do. I have gotten so desperate finding something for one of my Corgis who was in a cart that I've just used vet wrap and wrapped up his back legs when he's gone out in the snow to keep his paws safe and dry. But, that's going to put you going through a lot of vet wrap, so I don't recommend that as your first line of defense. But if you're just taking one walk a week out in the woods for a long time, vet wrap is a good thing to have. And in fact, you should have it in your pocket when you're going out, because if your pet gets any injury along the way, that could really be a big help to you. So worry about your pet's paws and check the paws when they come in. Tristan, last week when I was at work, I looked down and saw a little blood on the top of his foot. And in fact, he's very short. He was walking around in the ice and snow before we went in, and the ice had cut him on his paw a little bit. So always check your pet's feet and make sure that he has no cuts, no snowballs, no injuries, especially after they come in from ice. And I also let his claws get a little bit longer in this weather so that he has a little bit of a grip on the ice, especially on the steps, but keep an eye on that. The other important thing with your pet in this kind of weather is to make sure they have an ID tag with your name, your address, your current phone number, and in fact, get your pet chipped. I have a friend who thinks that chipping your pet is going to lead them to having cancer, but that is not half the risk your pet will have being unidentifiable. So if your pet hasn't got an ID tag, get one, and definitely keep one on his collar and have him wear his collar when he's outside, no matter what kind of pet you have. And this makes a really big difference when your pet gets lost in the snow or disoriented, or even around my neighborhood, people let their dogs out and they just run loose. And there's so many Labradors around here, I can't tell them apart. So occasionally I've had to herd one into the back seat of the car and drive him up to where he lives. And, he may live a half a mile from me, but it's getting to be 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and he needs to go home. So really important, even for the local neighbors, just to return your dog when he's not technically lost. I can't underestimate the importance of an ID tag. And then another important thing to remember, probably the most important, if your pet does not have a winter coat, if you shave your pet, if you live in Florida and you have a Corgi and you shave him and you're going to visit relatives in the Northeast, get him some coats. Dogs need blankets to replace their fur if you have shaved them. And then there are many breeds like poodles and Bichons and water dogs and even my sister's Cavaliers. They do not have a thick coat. Corgis have a double coat. They're really warm. If it weren't this cold, he wouldn't even wear a coat to go out. But if we go for any bit of a walk today, he is going to need this heavy jacket. How are you doing, Biss? You getting too hot? Are you okay? He's not even too hot in the house today. That's how cold it is, although it's 69 in the house. So really, I have friends with Labradoodles and Poodly mixes and Golden Doodles. Those dogs need jackets. All the pets with hair need a jacket or a blanket in this weather if they're out for any length of time, even if they're just running around the yard playing with you. So important to have a coat for them. And at this time of year, they were so available prior to the holidays for your Christmas gift giving for your pets. So it's really easy to find a coat to fit your dog at a lot of discount stores. So it's a good time of year to actually shop for a coat for your dog. A lot of the horse catalogs have really good blankets for your dogs. And certainly all of the outdoor catalogs like LL Bean, Eddie Bauerland's, and all of those type of catalogs have really good, almost like little miniature horse blankets for Labradors and some dogs like that. They're going to be out in the cold for a long time with you, maybe cross-country skiing. And if you are, for instance, cross-country skiing with a dog like a Labrador, make sure you check their temperature. You can tell how hot they are by feeling their ears. And also you can look at their tongue. If the tongue is bright red, they're getting hot. If it's pale, they're getting cold. And also use that as a way to know if your dog's getting overheated. Because just like you go out and it's cold and you're really layered up and then you start skiing and 25 minutes later you feel like you're going to die of suffocation. The same thing can happen to your dog. So make sure you check and make sure he's not too hot with the jacket he's wearing when you go out. But don't assume that a pet doesn't need a blanket. When it is under 15 or 20 degrees, even a Labrador needs some kind of coat if you're going to be outside for a long time. And another important thing that people forget, which I know from having been a horse person for so many years, the cold air, when you're working out really hard and breathing and panting like snowshoeing or skiing, really can just be way too cold for your lungs. Your body can't heat that air enough before it gets to your lungs, and that cold air can really restrict your lung function. So we used to not work the horses outside or go on trail rides up and down long hills in this kind of weather because it's really bad for the animal's lungs. It's bad for your lungs. So remember that your dog is really short. He's a lot shorter than you, even if he's a Labrador. So be really aware of how hard he's working in really cold air and the impact of that cold air on his lungs. Tristan, what do you think? You like having coats. He has a lot of coats in different weights, and really he's only had to wear this one occasionally, but we are supposed to have just subarctic weather here. Well, not subarctic, but really cold weather for 10 days or more, including New Year's Eve. We have a huge outdoor celebration here in town on New Year's Eve. It's not really pet friendly, thank God, because a lot of pets would be cold and their feet would be walking in ice melt. But it's going to be a very cold one, and I don't know if that will affect their numbers, but it's been getting more and more popular over the years. So make sure to keep your pet warm, wash off those feet, bring him inside. If you don't want to be outside, he doesn't want to be outside. And if your dog is one that really needs a lot of supervision to do his business out there, just throw on some boots and stay there with him, because you don't want to just leave him outside, and God forbid that you would forget that he was out. That would be catastrophic in this kind of weather. And I see Danny's not even with us today. She's in North Dakota. It's so cold. I don't even know if the internet works when it's that cold in North Dakota. She might be in South Dakota. So keep your pets warm. Don't take them in your car. Make sure they have an ID tag. If you've got a pet with hair, not fur, make sure he has some kind of a coat if you're going out. And keep your pet safe. So this has been Sally Morgan and Tristan Corgi for another episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And we will see you tomorrow at around 8:30 for another episode. Thanks for joining us today. Keep your pets and yourself warm. Have a great day.